courtside of the virtual hardwood, it's the NLSC Podcast. This is episode number 471. I am Andrew in our forum, and Andrew NLSC on Twitter. Joining me as always, my co-host Derek. He is D43 in our forum, and also on Twitter at D43G and D4384. Derek, good to be talking to you as always. However, it's not just us this week.
So this is incredibly exciting. We have johnz1 on the show this week. He is the creator of the amazing NBA Jam Legends on Fire Edition mod. And the last time I checked, it actually had 1,444 downloads off of the NLSC, and this mod was just recently released. That number is actually special, John. It is Moses Malone's highest single-season rebounds that he ever had in his career. So that number holds a special place. However, we have talked over the last couple of weeks about this mod. We summarized it pretty well on a recent episode. But why don't you tell us a little bit about this mod and what features it comes with?
Sure. So yeah, thank you very much for having me on the show. Very exciting, and I love talking about NBA Jam, so this should be a pleasure. Let's see, NBA Jam Legends on Fire Edition. It's a historical conversion mod, is what I'm calling it. You basically take NBA Jam on Fire Edition for PlayStation 3 and just rethink the entire roster and the campaign mode. Turn it from a game that was current with 2011 roster with some Legends sprinkled in, and turn it into basically all Legends. So expanding the roster to 67 teams, which is the hard-coded maximum. And every team is from a particular franchise in a particular era. So for the Bulls, for example, you've got the early 90s Bulls with MJ, Pippen, Horace Grant, and you've got the late 90s with MJ, Pippen, and Dennis Rodman, and then you've got the Derrick Rose era. So it's not just one team per franchise, it's one per era. And then the campaign mode has been changed to the original being like half players and half robots and mascots. And now it's historical scenarios. So you go to a team and then it's basically their worst losses in their history. Try to keep it to like big playoff losses, and you get to beat them as the team that they lost to in a particular scenario. Ton of new heads, in-game heads, completely redesigned team logos, and I think that's pretty much it.
68 new heads. Is that correct?
Yep, that's it.
How long would you say? Yeah, how long would you say it takes you? Once you got the process down, how long does it take you to add a new head?
Yeah, so let's go with the best case scenario. Let's go with someone who has a very tight haircut, so not flowing dreads like Darius Garland or John Morant. Let's go with someone like Desmond Bane, keeping on the Grizzlies. I would say, I'm such a ridiculous perfectionist with this stuff. So if you were a reasonable person, I think you could get it done in two hours. I take double that because I do size corrections. I'm going in between the game in the living room TV like 4 times because I want to get the sizes all perfect. I want to get the color correction, which takes the longest perfect. And the quality is there, but man, it just takes so long when you do it that way.
I mean, the results speak for themselves. It looks like a brand new game. It is just so seamless what you've added, and that's what's so impressive. I think Luke Plunkett said that in the Kotaku article, and rightfully so. It's one of the things that impressed me when you gave me that preview, and I'm sure you're the same, Derek, that it just looks like it's been updated officially.
You know what I'm so impressed with? The fact that he released the mod, and that Kotaku article came out just like 3 hours later. It's almost like they jumped all over this. And for people that don't know, those Kotaku articles are pretty damn popular. A lot of people look at that, and Luke Plunkett is an excellent writer, and he does a lot of excellent coverage on mods, on microtransactions and NBA 2K. Strongly against that and whatnot. But it was really cool to see Kotaku pick up this mod, write that article, and then see on the Discord and on the NLSC that they were driven to the mod from that article. I really appreciated that, but that must have been a big deal for you too.
Yeah, very cool to see. Very surprising. I was not following it close enough. I when you posted in the NLSC Discord, that's when I saw it. I'm like, it was that night, like 4 hours after they posted the article. I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, just wild stuff. Andrew and I actually connected for a little over an hour playing the mod. And of course, we put, Jordan and Pippen versus Barkley and KJ on the floor first. And we were just absolutely blown away by the quality of the cyber faces, the courts, the attention to detail with the Dornas, the crowd holding up a sign that says Air Jordan and whatnot. It's those little details that really make the mod look like it's part of the official release from EA Sports. And like I've said on past episodes, that is the sign of a great mod, is when you're playing it, you get lost in the mod and forget you're even playing a mod, right? So can you tell us, how important that was for you to get every little detail right?
Yeah, basically, I wanted to get every time I played it, I looked for something that was out of place or should be changed, could be changed, what would be cool to change. And yeah, I just worked on it for so long. It was so many iterations of going back to the original game files and like looking for more things. It's the perfectionist in me. It's just, let's just get everything exactly like you're saying. Let's get it exactly as if it was a new game.
One of the things I said in a previous show, one of my observations was, it reminded me of a ROM hack in so much as the custom levels for Super Mario Brothers and the old ROM hacks for NES, or a brand new Zelda game. Obviously, you've overhauled the game. You've added this, revamped the challenge mode of Road Trip. Was that, and it's also a very tough challenge, obviously, with the adaptive AI across the real AI across all of the challenges. Was that kind of something in the back of your mind as well, that this is going to be a souped up version of the game and a kind of a harder version because it's all centered around legends and legendary play?
Yeah, exactly. So that actually came pretty early, before I had texture editing capabilities. I was doing because the road trip matchups, they're just XML files. And if you don't know XML, it's text. You can just read it. You can take it straight from the game files and read it in a text editor and modify it. And so I was doing that. That was the very first thing I had was, let's make some historical matchups here. Let's put KD and Russ versus the Clippers and the Warriors. And as far as the difficulty, I guess it's kind of just a personal thing of like, when I ran through the original stock game Road Trip, it was really just like, I hated playing the robots and the hardest difficulty, because that was obviously the most challenging and the most rewarding. And like, I want to play the real people with the hardest difficulty, not these stupid robots.
Yeah.
So John, I actually wanted to know what your basketball background is. Basically, when did you become a fan? Who was your favorite team growing up? Who is your favorite team now, etc.?
Let's see. So I was in, I don't know, early maybe like first or second grade, and it was the early 90s, and it was really the middle of the first Jordan Bulls three-peat. And I had WGN, the Bulls channel, basically the channel that all the Bulls games were on. So I got all the Bulls games and all the Cavs games. And the Cavs were really good then too, and they were really fun. Mark Price was awesome. So that was really the beginning. That really hooked me right away. That's how I got into sports, was NBA. And so I'm not a Bulls fan, but big Cavs and Celtics fan. That definitely rubs a lot of people the wrong way in Boston, as you can imagine. Seems like every time the Cavs are good, the Celtics are also good. So it can be difficult.
Yeah, you and I actually became fans roughly around the same time. I think my The first season I can remember, as far as like sitting in front of my TV, getting a favorite player and whatnot, is like 90-91. Like, I remember the series against the Pacers where Bird bounced his face off the floor and whatnot. I remember D Brown winning the slam dunk contest and whatnot. And those Cavs that year were absolutely excellent, because I know it's post Ron Harper, but it's Mark Price and John Hot Rod Williams and Larry Nance and Brad Doherty and Craig Elo. That team was so good and so deep. There were so many good teams in the early 90s. In fact, my brother and I talk about it. We think that might be like peak NBA, the early 90s. Would you agree with that assessment?
Peak NBA. It's tough. I mean, it's so much different. Not only the play style and the rules, but just kind of the structure of player movement too. Like that Cavs team. How long were they together? Like that core was together for I don't even know how long, 7 years. I don't know. It was a long time. They were late 80s to mid 90s. So it was a different structure of the league too. But yeah, I don't know. It's the league's definitely fun now. I like it, but I definitely think it's kind of tipped into maybe the pendulum's gone a little too far in a few different areas.
Yeah, you may not like 70 to 83s a game, like us. Like I'm not really a fan of that. Andrew actually would definitely appreciate the Bull stuff, because Andrew became a hardcore basketball fan in the mid 90s at the start of the second Bulls three-peat.
Yeah, I mean, that was when basketball was really taking off here in Australia, really gaining popularity. Our league, the NBL, which is now seen as a viable path to the NBA, of course, and quite a few players going to the NBL rather than college, actually, including LaMelo Ball. But yeah, it was a kind of a golden age for the NBL as well, and I remember getting the magazines. The Australian basketball magazines would cover both leagues, and it was you always kind of got the best of both worlds in that respect. But yeah, I really became a Bulls fan in the mid 90s, and remain one to this day. It's kind of tough, but at the same time, you go through that three-peat and you have all those highlights, and you feel like your team is invincible for 3 years there. It's I've got a lot of good memories to fall back on, John, basically, and yeah, so I've got that nostalgia, even if there's been frustration in the years since.
Yeah, regardless if it's just a particular memory and of a particular special time in my life, it feels like a magical time in the NBA when Jordan was reigning. I mean, especially the comeback. I mean, geez, that was such a big deal, and it was so exciting. And then for him to repeat again, that was just incredible. What a crazy time in the NBA.
Are you trying to say that Brent Barry wasn't a fitting replacement for Michael Jordan and you didn't have the same excitement?
He probably didn't live up to the hype, I'd say. If that was
I will not stand for this Cornell David erasure, I tell you. But yeah,
Brent Barry and Michael Jordan have one thing in common. They both dunked it from the foul line in the dunk contest. That's the only thing they have in common.
Some similarities, yeah. But of course, we couldn't truly appreciate Michael Jordan on the virtual hardwood at that time. And we could add him to games, and that's how our modding community at the NLSC really started, was adding those missing players like Barkley, like MJ, and with a game, and even today with 2K, obviously, players like Rasheed Wallace, Reggie Miller, Charles Barkley are not in the game. Michael Jordan is. But with a game like NBA Jam, missing MJ, and he's never been in an NBA Jam game except for that one version that was really officially, apart from that one version that was kind of had a limited distribution, and Tim Kitzrow, who's been on the show before, has talked about, and Mark Tamel has talked about before as well, the special MJ and Gary Payton version, and the Ken Griffey Jr. I think Ken Griffey Jr. was in one of the versions as well. They just kind of made that special version, but it's really cool, obviously, to have MJ in this mod. But when I was talking to you when you were giving me a preview, John, you did mention that it might have been possible that they were trying to get him in Jam 2010, the precursor to On Fire Edition.
Oh yeah, he was in there. He was in the game, not playable by the public, but yeah, NBA Jam 2010. His head is complete and in the game. So the one that's in Legends on Fire Edition, I did not make that. That is straight out of NBA Jam 2010, just in the files, just sitting right there. I guarantee the developers were playing with it And after they released it, I mean, how could you not?
Oh, for sure.
100%.
Yeah.
And they also talk about being on the NLSC. We've talked with developers in the past, and they're using the mods that the NLSC posts, right? Like in the different threads. So I guarantee that the developers are a lot like us, right, Andrew? Like where they're,
Definitely.
They're jumping in on the threads. They're using the different mods. They're using Charles Barkley in video games. They're using Jordan in NBA Jam. That is a no-brainer. If I was a developer, like I would be all over that.
And it's really cool, actually, that there is this stuff that we find when you're modding, and you having been involved with modding for so long, John, you've no doubt seen this hidden content. MJ in 2010, Jam 2010 being a huge find, obviously, but the cutting room floor obviously is something that came up in our Discord the other day. That is a great resource for information like that. And there's a lot of stuff that's been dummied out in games over the years, and it's really cool to be able to put that content to use in mods.
Yes, absolutely. And I really, on one hand, it's kind of strange to me that they leave something in like that, especially something that they don't have the license for. But that issue aside, I really love that they do leave it in, because you can recycle it and use it as they used it. But also, it makes me wonder sometimes, like, why didn't you use that signature shot? Why is that unused? Is it broken? Am I never going to make a shot if I use that signature shot? Or is it totally fine to use and you just, I don't know, you thought it was ugly or something?
So I showed you my, I had you connect to me and I showed you my NBA 2K17 Ultimate Classic Teams roster. So when I got to the Phoenix Suns and I showed you Charles Barkley's face in the game, his face is in the files. And there's also probably 75 to 100 faces in the NBA 2K17 files of players that they didn't put in the game and that they probably don't have the license for that I was able to use in the roster. For example, the 0304 Timberwolves in that game, Michael Olowokandi is not on the team because they don't have the rights to him, right? But Michael Olowokandi, his cyberface is in 2K17's files. So I was able to throw that in there, throw him on the roster, edit his attributes, signatures, badges, all of that stuff, and just hit the ground running. And I was able to complete that 0304 Timberwolves team mostly with faces that were in the files. So it is wild to think that these faces were either moved over from a prior game or created new and whatnot, but then they weren't even used in any mode in the game. So I do find that fascinating.
Wow, that's a lot. 75 is a ton.
It's a lot.
I think the thing to remember is that the developers, I don't want to make a sweeping statement, but basically, I think the developers actually usually enjoy the games they work on and or care about it. And they're not the legal team. They're not the ones keeping Michael Jordan out of the game. They are the opposite of that. So on one hand, it's kind of surprising they put something in there or leave it in there. On the other hand, they probably love this game too. So
they're definitely preparing for it. They're preparing to add those players if legal can get their can dot all the I's, I suppose.
Sure.
Before I throw it back over to Derek for another question, before we can move away from hidden content too much, I did want to ask about some of the things you might have found in the files, because when I was talking to the late Cody Sawatsky, who was a producer on NBA Jam on Fire Edition, sadly passed away a few years ago. When I was interviewing him, there was things actually I had to cut out of the interview because they weren't. We didn't get approval to mention them at the time. I think we're in the clear now. But he did mention that at one point they were trying to implement or looking to implement create a team and create a player for OFE. So I was just wondering if you found any remnants of that in the code or whatever when you were poking around.
No, that would be so cool. I haven't seen anything like that. But that would have been. Oh, can you imagine? That would have been so cool. Especially if you could import like textures and
Oh, definitely, yeah. It's a shame that the series ended when it did. I mean, it ended on a high note with on Fire Edition, but as Derek and I have talked about before, they seem to be set up for the future and to release a new Jam game at least every couple of years or every few years since they've got the license and a great base to work on. But they just kind of went away from it and didn't really bring the fire with live either. The past generation for the most part. So it's so much missed potential with on Fire Edition.
Absolutely, I think it's it's strange and kind of tragic how it went down. You know, it was supposed to be this bonus for NBA Live coming back. You know, it's like NBA Live's back, and we'll throw in this great NBA Jam, and then they bail on Live and they make Jam a $60 game, and it's awesome. And then the developers get this rare opportunity, in my estimation, to come back and have 1 year of development and make the game way better. Maybe not all the things, but do a lot of things that they couldn't do. Fix a lot of stuff. You know, add tag mode, add this new road trip campaign.
Yep.
And just kind of get it right, and then that's it. They just get cut off.
How can you go out on that note? That's like you going out, John, in like a men's league or something and scoring 60 or 70 points, and then saying, all right, I'm retiring. That's it. I'm done. And then never playing another game again. It's like you can't go out on like a 60-point performance unless you're Jamal Crawford in the real NBA where you score 50 and then no team signs you. Yeah. So the next question that I had for you is, what is your history with the NLSC?
Oh yeah, I've been going to your site for more than 20 years. I remember having a portable PC, so I don't even remember what kind of graphics card it had, but it was early 2000s, so I don't know, Voodoo or something. I remember I had a portable PC, and I remember in one summer loading up like different mods and different teams that were being updated in the summer, and then taking it to my buddy's house and playing it. So for so long, downloading NBA, I guess it was NBA Live at that point. Yeah, Live early 2000s, getting mods. And then definitely a long break when I didn't play 2K or Live through, let's see, 2K7, I think I came back into it. And I played for a couple years and then, fell off a little bit. But I always have that other basketball games. That's been a follow on the forum with email alerts for a very long time, just because I love these arcade games. So it was great to work on NBA Street Volume 2 and see what's been done with that, and the other NBA Jam games, and always been waiting for on Fire Edition to be hacked, but had to go my own way with that.
So that actually brings me right to my next question. So you have worked on mods in the past, including Street Volume 2. And it wasn't just for basketball video games. You've modded other games as well. Can you tell us what those mods were and what games you modded?
Yeah, I've been modding games for 20 years. ROM hacks to start with. So I started in 2003 with the Tecmo football games. So Tecmo Super Bowl, the Nintendo version a little bit, and then I went to Tecmo Super Bowl 3, and that was kind of like a stepchild of the Tecmo community. It's just not that popular with Tecmo players. That's the one with the moniker Final Edition, and it wasn't, but it's like the last Super Nintendo version. So I was modding that with a couple people, and then really got my feet wet there. And then I moved on to I basically just mod all my favorite games. So Ken Griffey Jr. presents Major League Baseball. If you've played the game, you probably really like it. It's such a fun, arcadey, over-the-top baseball game for Super Nintendo again. And, man, what was out? I don't think there were any mods for that game, but there was an editor for Windows. So I used that, and I got really good in 2003 and 4 I released, or maybe it was 4 and 5. Anyway, I did that game for like 3 years straight, and 2007 was my last one, and I was pretty burnt out at that point, but that game is really fun. After that, I think NBA Street comes to mind. So NBA Street Volume 2, Zhao Shming, if that's how you pronounce his name on the forum. I think he's gone now, but
he works for 2K now.
Yeah, John works for 2K now. Just me. Yeah.
Great.
He has for years, yeah, which is awesome for him.
Yeah. And I think it was right around the time that this happened, but he had posted like how to edit some stuff in Street Volume 2, and I think I immediately jumped on it, and I made 2015 remix and 2016 remix. totally. And then I was working with a couple other people too at that one. And then from there, I went to NFL Blitz 2003. That was the last one for the GameCube PS2 generation. Or no, it was the first one for that generation. I don't know. I don't remember. So I did that for a couple years, and I love that game. It's my favorite Blitz. And then I think that was it until Jam. I started that the end of 2018.
And it's really cool that you've been modding all different types of games over the years. And obviously we've been focusing on NBA Live and then NBA 2K mods in our community and with other games as well, like Street and Jam now, obviously. But so many favorites over the years and so many modding communities around the internet. I mean, the Doom mods back in the day, the custom levels for Doom, obviously, and I remember downloading Simpsons Doom and South Park Doom for Doom 2, Doom 2 mods back in the day as well. I remember downloading some mods and editors for the original Need for Speed, making some of my own tracks, just seeing if I could make a straight line and see if I could get just how fast I could get in the Warrior Car and unlocking the Warrior Car, which you usually get for completing all the tracks and winning all the championships in that game, or all the races, I should say. So yeah, it's a lot of great mods out there for all kinds of games. GTA obviously is another one that's heavily modded, and as you say, Tecmo Bowl. But yeah, it's really cool to see, and I think modding has really added so much to games over the years. So it's no surprise that as Derek mentioned, that so many developers on the down low will use community mods.
Yeah, boy, the Doom WADs, man, that takes me back. That was unbelievable to see, a custom Doom level and everything customized. That blew my mind back in the day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think a couple of things you said actually speak to me, John. You kind of, your voice changes a little bit when you bring up Street Volume 2, and it's the same tone that you have when you talk about NBA Jam on Fire Edition. And I've said it on numerous podcasts that I think those two might be the best arcade basketball games of all time. And I do consider Street arcade because you're, jumping 10, 15 feet above the rim to throw it down on alley-oops and whatnot. So that's really cool. I love those two games. I can never get enough of them. And I still connect with the community on them today using Parsec and whatnot. And the other piece, too, is you mentioned that you didn't mod a game because you didn't like it. We've said it so many times. How important is it for you to love the game that you're modding? I mean, it's vital.
It's everything. I don't know why. I just don't know why I would work on a game that I didn't really love. I can't even think of a time when I even dipped into the game files for anything without being interested in, playing the game a lot. So yeah, it's everything, and it holds everything together too. When I stop working on a game, it's usually because I'm either burnt out of working on it or burnt out of playing it, and it's usually playing it. Jam, this is the longest I've worked on a game, particularly a single project too. Usually I'll bounce. With Street it was 1 year after another. With Griffey it was 1 year after another. But for Jam, it's holding it together because it's kind of this kind of timeless concept of historical teams. And for me, what holds it together is it's still fun as hell to play. I still play a couple times a week with friends, and I don't mind playing against a computer. It's still fun to play against a computer. I'm not tired of that either.
I think Andrew's experiences a lot with these games are a little bit different from mine growing up because I have two brothers I'm really close with. So normally when I'm playing, NBA Showtime or NBA Jam or College Slam or any of the arcade games, or even if I'm playing any of the 5-on-5 games, I'm usually playing against one of my brothers or we're playing co-op and whatnot. But Andrew has mostly gone with the single player experience, and he really appreciates that, and he appreciates the single player experience even more than I do as a result. But did you play a lot of NBA Jam on Fire Edition, Andrew, solo back in the day?
I did, and it was only last year that I finally completed Road Trip. I'd beaten all the NBA teams, so went going through and finishing all the platinum challenges and getting right through the Beastie Boys this is the original road trip, obviously the unmodded road trip. I know there's not to spoil anything, but there is special challenges in the Legends on Fire Edition mod, obviously. But yeah, I played that solo. I did my cousin when he visited. Of course, that's when you're an adult. That does become few and far between when you've got other responsibilities, jobs, and so forth. He would play with me when he came to visit, or a couple of times I would connect with people online because, of course, when the servers were up, you could connect and just jump in any time with a second player and road trip. And in fact, even the community manager at the time at EA joined me for a couple of games. So that was really cool to play with him at the time. One of my favorite community managers, actually, that they've had, and I've been able to work with at EA over the years. So I would play some multiplayer, of course, and again, growing up with my cousins, as I've said before, visiting more often in the school holidays back in the day, in the late 90s, early 2000s, we'd play those games, play Jam Tournament Edition for hours on end, and NBA Live for hours on end, so I would have that co-op experience then. But yeah, certainly over the years, I've probably had more solo experience just playing against the CPU and playing Dynasty mode by myself and having that single-player fantasy scenarios and so forth. But no, it's great that the Jam on Fire Edition does cater so well to both the multiplayer and the single-player experience. And that's a sign of a truly great game, that both of those experiences are top-notch.
No, 100%. So, John, let's get back to the mod. So talk to us about some difficult decisions that you had to make in relation to lineups.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of them. So I think there's a pretty short list, fortunately, of players that couldn't fit. So I think the first one that comes to mind is Portland, the early 2000s, late 90s Trailblazers. So that's Rasheed Wallace and Scottie Pippen. Notably absent Arvydas Sabonis. Really wanted to get him in, but anytime you talk to me about like actually modding this game and the nitty gritty, there's gonna be a lot of like me describing there's this weird thing and this is why it has to be this way. So there's this weird thing where Scottie Pippen is in the game twice, right? He's on the Bulls and he's also on the full court press team, but they're actually two different player models, but they share the same head. So you can have Scottie Pippen on two different teams and notably two different uniforms. So he can be and not have to take up any slots. And so I basically got Portland, that Portland 2000s team. It's kind of like a 2-for-1. So I just added like one player, Rasheed Wallace, and that becomes a team. And so adding another player wasn't really possible. You'd have to take out I don't know, Penny Hardaway or Charles Barkley or someone like that in order to add someone else. So no Arvydas Sabonis for that one. That's a big one. Latrell Sprewell on the Warriors. I really wanted to get him in there, but that couldn't happen. They just have two guards, Mullen and Hardaway, and Nolan Cycli too.
Yeah, somebody asked for that to be changed too. They were like, "Oh, we're going to get Billy Owens there or Chris Gatling." I personally like Ronnie on that team, but I think they also suggested Mitch Richmond. But you're trying to create a balance with these teams, and you want the teams to have a big guy as an option. So I know that's also got to be a challenge when you're putting these teams together.
Yeah, the goal. This came after years of playing 4-player. The goal was, I want every team to have at least one big man and at least two ball handlers, because it's not common that people will play a double big lineup, but it is common that people want to play a small ball lineup, 2 shooters, 2 ball handlers, whatever, 2 guys that can steal. So that was the goal. Obviously, there's a bunch of teams that only have 2 guys. It wasn't really possible. Because another goal is I really wanted to maximize the number of teams, just have the absolute, just go right up to the edge. I did think of another tough decision. There's a bunch of teams that don't have accurate uniforms. So I'm thinking Denver 2020s, the modern Denver team, the 90s Pistons, the Grant Hill Pistons with the teal uniforms. And then the modern Lakers, LeBron Lakers. And the trade-off is you can either have them join the existing teams with the existing uniform, or you can eliminate a whole other team because they have their unique uniforms. And that's the big trade-off, and why there's so many teams that don't have their actual uniforms. And that brought me to a Lakers decision where I can just use one uniform slot for all three Lakers, or not the 80s, not the short shorts, but all the long shorts Lakers. That's all one uniform set. So it's Shaq, Kobe, Pau Gasol, LeBron James, and Anthony Davis. So if I were to, the tough thing is those are all two-player teams. It's Shaq and Kobe, Kobe and Pau, LeBron and AD, only two players. And I'm like, oh,
right.
man.
Why would you want to use anybody else, right? So that makes sense.
Yeah,
like,
that's another thing.
That, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but you can't go small. You can't. There's no Lamar Odom. There's no Derek Fisher. There's no, I don't know, Rondo or KCP. So you lose flexibility, but you gain the ability to max out the number of teams.
And it's funny because these limitations and these design choices are very similar to what I'm sure the original developers had to consider when they were designing the game. A couple of episodes ago, Derek and I were talking about the ratings in NBA Jam and some of the weird ratings in TE in particular. And one of the conclusions that we drew was that some of the selections of players and some of the fudged ratings were to make sure that there was that balance, and that certain teams had, okay, we do have a powerful player, we do have a power player, we do have a shot blocker, we do have a three-point shooter. So somebody like, in the PC version and the PS1 version of Tournament Edition, for example, B.J. Armstrong was taken off the Bulls, replaced by Ron Harper. Ron Harper has a much higher three-point rating than he should because he's replacing the three-point shooting of B.J. Armstrong. So there's been trade-offs here. Is that something that you've noticed when you've been working on Fire Edition and working with the rosters and looking at how all the ratings are put together?
Yeah, I really think you guys nailed it on that episode. I was kind of laughing to myself when I was listening to you guys. I'm like, I can't believe this. This is exactly what I tell my friends. Like, I know I think to myself too. All the talk of like replacement ratings and like, I'll give you a great example. Glenn Robinson on the Bucks. So it's Ray Allen, Glenn Robinson, Sam Cassell. The uniform slot only has three players, and there's no way I'm going to have anyone over those three guys. Those were the three guys in that team. So they don't have a big guy. So what do? We'll give Glenn Robinson a 7 for strength, right, and make him a pseudo big guy. Yeah,
clearly that's happened in the original games as well. So it's interesting what looks like an error has been done quite deliberately.
Yeah, and it comes to a larger concept for me, which is this is not a sim. This is an arcade game, and the ratings are not sim. So generally, everyone's gonna be good at what they're good at in real life. But at some point, I like to have what the team was good at, be represented by the ratings of the players. So if the team was an awesome defensive team, their ball handler is going to have a good steal. It doesn't matter if he's a great stealer. For me, it doesn't matter if he was great at steal in real life. If that's an awesome defensive team, he needs to be awesome on defense.
Yeah, see, that makes sense. And I actually don't think it's too far off to have Glenn Robinson like a 7 on strength or anything like that, because at least he was, he played in the post, right? He was a decent rebounder, yeah, all of that stuff. So, and he was, I want to say, from memory, 6'8", maybe 6'9". So he also had some size. So that, I think that even makes sense to have him a 7 on strength. I did think of one other difficult decision you had to make, and it's one that you and I actually were talking through on the phone. Taking Daryl Dawkins off of the 76ers in a game that's called NBA Jam.
Yes. Let's pour one out for Daryl. That was not fun. I did not enjoy doing that. Yeah. So, I mean, when you look back at the championship team, and it's those eras for all these teams, for me, they surround championships. And for that, you have to have that 80s Sixers team. And for me, it's got to be the championship team. And that was no doubt about it. Dr. J's got to be in there. Moses has got to be in there. And then it's really like it's Barkley or it's Dawkins. And Barkley just, he's just a better player. What can you say?
Yeah, I mean, Andrew knows that Daryl Dawkins is one of my favorite players to use or play with on Jam on Fire Edition. We actually use him quite frequently on Road Trip. When Andrew and I connect on my Xbox One, he'll use Dawkins usually, actually, while I use Irving, and we do a really good job with that team. So What would we talked about difficult decisions with lineups. What lineups would you like to add to this mod in the future if you find a way to maybe free up more team slots, or maybe if you decide to, replace some of the teams you have in there? What would that look like?
Yeah, so the technical path to this is crystal clear for me. It's this, well, at least the concept is, the file is a trib.db. It's this file, and it controls, at a minimum, it controls what is associated with all the player models. So what uniform are they associated with, what shoes, what player, what body shape, and I'm sure it has more. And I know for a fact that this is where all that is stored, because in the roster update save file, if you extract the files in there and you replace just that one file, the changes that are in that roster update are made. So I know for a fact that it's in there, and I just haven't figured out how to edit it. I have put out a multi-$100 bounty on this file, and I've gotten one guy to start working on it, but he hadn't figured it out, and that was a year ago, and that's probably not going to happen. But yeah, the path is clear. That's how to do it. It would be great. I hope it happens one day, and I hope I'm still working on the game, because it would be so cool to use all the player slots. So that said, if that actually happens, it really opens the door for, no team should have two players. That's for sure to start with. But beyond that, I go back to the Portland again. They had so many players in that team, beyond Arvidas, Steve Smith, Damon Stoudemire, Walt Williams,
they were stacked.
Brian.
Bonzi Wells was on the 99-2000 Blazers. Yeah, I mean they had a lot of good players. Yeah.
So many guys, and they didn't have a lot of guys throughout those 5 or 6 years that scored a ton. It was by committee. So that would be so great. You don't really need it, but the Spurs too. The Spurs have such a long list of players through their dynasty. Bruce Bowen, Steven Jackson, Michael Finley. Plenty. The Raptors, so I've got Carter and Bosch in the same team, but to fill out those teams, like Tracy McGrady, before he goes to the Magic, put Jose Calderon back in there, give him a guard.
Maybe a young Marcus Camby, maybe.
Absolutely. Yeah, Marcus Camby in the Knicks too. That would be great.
Yep.
Fill out the Jazz, Jeff Hornacek, put him on there if you want to go small. He was a great shooter.
And these are the limitations that not everybody necessarily understands when they download a mod, and why you've been very gracious in explaining that certain players can't be added, at least until you work this out. And of course, there's also some limitations with the textures. I know you've had to make some tough decisions with some of the jerseys have to represent. They can't have the proper jerseys with the name and number. They've kind of have to be just a standard texture for all players with maybe the same number or the just that same design to get around that. And look, these are the things, they do not ruin the mod at all. They're things that we notice, because eagle-eyed gamers will always notice these things. But I think you've come up with some great solutions there. And another solution that you came up with was balancing the 3-point ratings. I know that's something that some people might look at and wonder what's happened there. But you explained it to me when we were talking before the mod release, and I think you came up with a good solution there, considering the game balance you were going for.
Yeah, and this is something I have a history of doing in my mods. So I think it definitely started with Tecmo and Griffey too. Just a quick example. So with Griffey, that game's kind of crazy. If you have a good outfielder, if you get a single to right field, that right fielder, if he's any good, can throw you out at first base. And I always hated that. So it's kind of making the game more sim in the Griffey sense. But with Jam, it's basically the ratings are balanced for 4-player play. The original game, man, if you get a rating above 7, if you're any good, you shouldn't be missing threes unless you got a guy right in your face, because it's just practically automatic. Once you get that timing down of the release, it's just automatic. So for a bunch of different ratings, I think it's speed, steal, dribble, 3-pointer. Let's see. That's it. Yeah. For those, it caps at 8. And even for 8, it's really a select few. So on speed, it's like Isaiah Thomas, kind of really good players that were really fast. And for 3, I think the only 8s on three-pointer is Steph Curry, Ray Allen, and Reggie Miller. I think those are the only 3. And then a 5 is kind of, they shoot threes, maybe not the best, but they're a good shooter. A 6 is above average, and a 7 is a really good three-point shooter. Even like, and that's another thing when we talk about ratings. It's like, it's not a sim. It's not what's on paper. It's not. It's about volume. It's about how good they were in general. So I think an example of that is Reggie Miller, kind of in his later stages of his career in the 2000s. He has a 7 on three-pointer, so he was really good, no doubt about it. But he was not 90s Miller. 90s Reggie was very different. So he's an 8, but the 2000s Reggie Miller is a 7.
I got to say this, though. So you've seen me connecting and sharing those highlights. I've been connecting with the community on Parsec playing the Legends on Fire Edition mod. I think I've connected with, I want to say 4 or 5 people so far. And, we've used many different teams. We've used like Kevin Garnett and Latrell Sprewell on the Timberwolves, Curry and Durant for the Warriors. We've used Barkley and KJ and whatnot. And what you did with the ratings made us have to use those teams differently and use those players to their strengths. For example, when I was playing with Ermoli, we were using the Wolves, and Sprewell is not a great three-point shooter. He can hit them, but I wasn't able to just park myself behind the three-point line like I did with Steph Curry and knock down a bunch of threes with Sprewell. I had to attack the basket more, right? And with Kevin Garnett, he had to use Kevin Garnett completely different than when he used Kevin Durant. And that is the beauty of the rating system that you used, because it made us have to use the Timberwolves like the Timberwolves, but in an arcade style. And I thought it worked out really well.
Yeah, thank you. So that was exactly the intent. When we played 4-player, it didn't take long for it to devolve into just like everyone realized, oh, we should never shoot 2s. and defensively too. It's just like, give it up. Just give up the 2. Totally give up the 2. Do not let them shoot 3s. And that's all it was. And it was like it was just very clear to me one night. I'm like, I need to change these ratings. This is not good. This is not a fun game. And of course, there's a parallel to real NBA, modern NBA basketball, where every team just wants to bomb away from 3.
Right. I always thought it was a little too easy for me to just walk up to the three-point line, and Andrew can attest to this, and just knock down 3 after 3 after 3 with Gary Payton. Like he was like a souped-up Steph Curry, I would say, on that Supersonics team. But hey, it worked well for us, didn't it, Andrew?
Oh, yeah. We make it work. I might be getting my mods mixed up here, but did you say that Gary Payton has some wrong attributes, that he has like a big man attributes or behind the scenes in on Fire Edition? Is that something you fixed, or am I thinking of a different mod?
Nope, that's it. It's this game. Yeah. So there's beyond the ratings, there's attributes set to each player, and
dunk packages and things of that nature.
Exactly, packages. Yes. So there's dunk package, there's shot package, and then there's one called, and I don't know why this is, but it's called Loco package, LOCO. I'm assuming it's like locomotion, like how they move. I don't think it's the Spanish, word for crazy.
Yes, probably not.
Probably not. So he is, let's see, he's at least the Loco set to big man, which is so strange. You'd think it'd be someone like on the fringe, like, I don't know, Detlef Schrempf, even his teammate. But no, he's set to package Loco big man and package dunk big man. It's the weirdest.
What does that do for him outside of change? Obviously, that makes him have like a big man dunk package. But What else does that entail? Because I use Gary Payton all the time when Andrew and I play, and I'm knocking down threes like crazy. I've broken the backboard multiple times with Gary Payton. But is that part of it?
Yeah, that's definitely why. The Loco package, I do not know what that is. I mean, I know the name of it. I don't know what it translates to as far as the gameplay. I suspect it's I don't know, maybe how the computer plays with them. There's not a whole lot as far as computer logic, I call it, of how the computer should play with a player. Loco package could be, I don't know. It really wouldn't follow the other two. Dunk package and shot package are really like just how the player moves and what they do. As far as how the computer acts, there's archetype, and that's 1 through 5 corresponding to, 1 through 5 point guard through center. And then there's something called reflection key, and that is basically every stock player has a reflection key, and that changes how they act. It may even be how difficult they are. I don't know. I haven't been able to figure that out. I haven't looked too deeply into that.
I was going to ask if you found any kind of markers that revealed any of the mechanics, like things like exactly what leads to the backboard shattering, for example. Like, I informally thought that it was about 25 dunks in a game or thereabouts, combined dunks and alley-oops, led to a backboard shattering in the final minute. Have you found anything like that kind of leads to that sort of it reveals the secrets in that respect?
Man, it definitely rings a bell, but nothing comes to mind aside from these fixes. Yeah, sorry, nothing comes to mind. I haven't looked in detail in the game files for years now.
Yeah.
So I've forgotten a lot already.
No, that's cool. I just wondered because sometimes we do. There's all these video game myths around. Of course, they call them the urban legends of Zelda. Is what they call it over on TV tropes, and of course the Zelda series has many. The whole thing with Ocarina of Time, you can totally get the Triforce, and it wasn't until they and there was all these rumors about it and people making up stories, and then they dumped the ROM and said, look, there is nothing in the code, nothing in the text that says you have found the Triforce. There's nothing, no cutscenes about it. All the whatever hidden content is in that game. That was from an early release before they finalized the story. So it's when you really get into the game and sometimes dump these files that you can find this stuff and dispel the myths. Obviously,
yes, that would be great. I'd love to see what some of these things translate to. The Loco package is probably number one on the list.
Before we go on, a reminder that the NLSC podcast comes out every week on the NLSC, nba-live.com, as well as our YouTube channel. We're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other podcast apps. If you're listening on any of those apps, we'd greatly appreciate a review. To keep up with the show and everything we're doing with basketball gaming in general, connect with us on social media. On Twitter and Facebook, we are the NLSC. We also have an Instagram, NLSC Basketball, and on YouTube, we're youtube.com/NBA Live Series Center. Once again, visit us at nba-live.com, where in addition to the podcast, you'll also find all of our original content, as well as our forum and modding community.
So you stated that you were working on this project 3 years ago. I think what much of our community needs to understand is that this isn't a new project. You had actually been working on this for the last 4 years. Can you tell us about some of the challenges you faced during the modding process these last 4 years?
Oh yeah. I'm over the 50-month mark. It's an insane amount of time to spend. It's mostly, I'd like to say on and off, but it's mostly on. Some of the challenges, obviously the roster decisions, but things just kind of came in phases. So the first thing was, it all started back at the end of 2018. So it was the last day of 2018. I was, drinking a beer, waiting for my then girlfriend to get ready to go out for New Year's. It was New Year's Eve, and I was playing on RPCS 3, the emulator, and it would just a few months before became playable on the emulator. So I was waiting for that for so long. So I was playing, and I'm just kicking around. I got some time. Like, I wonder what the files look like. I wonder what those game files look like. Like, is this anything even possibly workable that I could change anything? Because I had never touched anything in this generation of video games. And even in the last one, it was only 2 games I've modded. So I took a look at it, and wow, I have human readable XML files. Very interesting. And then just minutes later, I'm like, there's IDs here. There's player ID numbers here. What happens if I change them? Will the game just crash? No, it works. You can put anyone in any road trip mode just by changing the human readable XML file player ID number. So that was the beginning, and well before I got any kind of texture changes. So that was the first wave, was kind of that, and then I knew I had to change. I knew there was going to be a difficult path, and it was most of 2019. I think it was in like August of 2019 that I knew about this one file. It's called bounce.db, bounce like a basketball, and it's this database that has all players. And boy, that was I got it. I got to be able to mod it, and it was at once a big triumph of like, oh my god, this is happening, but then a huge disappointment, because in that file you basically have all. The big thing is the players and teams, but you can change Paul Pierce. Let's put him on Oklahoma City. Yeah, but his uniform is still Boston, and that was super disappointing, because I thought it was the end of the road for the challenges. It was just the beginning. So there was a lot of that. Breakthroughs were joyous, to say the least, but so many hours went into all of the different discoveries. And I don't know, I'm not the best hacker modder of all time. I'm okay after 20 years, but there's still things that I should have done and didn't do. I think I took a really, really, really difficult route to make this project, particularly with that attribdb file. I mean, if you want to mod this game, you need to figure out that file. It's so difficult to walk the path that I've walked. I would not recommend it.
So that eureka moment as a modder is like everything, right? It's when you find out that you can mod a game, that you actually change something physically in the game. I'm sure that's how Andrew felt the first time he used like DB Commander for the old NBA Live games. It's how I felt in modding multiple games in the past. It's like your mind explodes just thinking about like all of the possibilities.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
What was when you realized you could mod this game, and that you could mod it for the RPCS3 and possibly for jailbroken PS3s and whatnot, what was the project that first came to mind? Was it the project that you ended up releasing, or was it something different?
It was the opposite. So the idea of the project came more than a decade before I started working on it. Actually, no, not a decade. So it was 2018. It was the first game when the first one came out, NBA Jam 2010. That was the year that I had the idea, and I had the name for it too. For when on Fire Edition came out, I was like, oh god, I want to do Legends on Fire Edition. I swear, a whole idea came out then. I'm like, I want to have these, because it was all these crazy legends, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to mix and match and play against Larry Bird and Paul Pierce. Like, I want Larry Bird to have his own team. And so yeah, the Legends on Fire Edition idea came way earlier, and then I was kind of waiting for a new jam to come out for a very long time, and once it was playable in the emulator, that was go time for me, this game. So then the idea for the game, actually how it happened. So for a very long time, years, I didn't figure out how to edit textures. So it was just replacement player. So instead of I don't know, like every bald player had Jarrett Jack's head. like Antoine Walker. I know he's not in Legends on Fire Edition, but Antoine Walker was in the game for a while, and he had Jarrett Jack's head, and basically everyone that has a bald head used him. But for a long time, it was without being able to change the textures, I just had the 30 teams that I would use. So I disabled all the fake teams, and it was like an all-time franchise teams. So you'd have all the different eras, all the good Lakers on one team. And what the problem with that is, for me, it just got really old of like, we might as well have 30 teams with 2 players when we're playing, because you're just going to use the best 2 players. And then all these guys that I've added, and this team is like 8 players deep, no one's using the bench, essentially. And why would you? So that was really the end there of like, okay, I got to figure out texture editing, I got to get serious and like take a pause from working on the specific mod and go back to the lab and start to figure more about the game out. And boy, the best eureka moment was the texture editing. And when I figured that out, that was crazy. I put Giannis in the game immediately, and I was just like, okay, I need to get organized right now because I have a lot of ideas. There's a lot to do once you can edit textures.
And so not to get too personal here, and by all means tell me to cut this if you'd rather not have it on the show, but you have mentioned to me that you, and without getting into all the personal details, that you do work in software and programming. Is that something that modding led you to, and obviously has that helped you in becoming an even better modder?
So yeah, I'm not a programmer. I would say I'm a scripter, and I'm a sysadmin. So has it helped? I think with skills it's helped.
Troubleshooting.
Yeah, certainly troubleshooting. I mean, I've had a career of troubleshooting, but I think the specifics of what I do professionally have helped of just getting used to new tools, getting used to the technical language, getting used to just looking at data in general, and I guess
knowing your way around a computer, right?
Certainly that. Yeah. Well, yeah. I've had that for a long time though.
That's something that some people don't understand. I mean, I don't want to gatekeep here because, as listeners know, and hopefully you guys know as well, I despise gatekeeping. I always push back on it, and I'm all for anybody throwing their hat into the ring and getting into modding whatever game it is. But it is one of those things where you are opening up a game and tinkering with it. And there are some people who over the years have asked how to get into modding, and they've kind of expected it to be, I just run a program and click a few buttons and it spits out a great cyberface or whatever. And it is, you need to have a bit of technical know-how and a bit of hacker to you to get this stuff done. And the best modders are the ones that have really honed their computer skills. And again, I encourage anybody who wants to get into modding to get into it. But please be aware that you at least need to know your way around the computer a little bit. You need to be an intermediate user at the very least.
Yeah. So there's the modding there's the project, Legends on Fire Edition, and all the textures and the graphics and the rosters, all that. And then there's the breaking new ground. There's the how do you change this game? And that part is, at least for me, it's really difficult. It's I look back 20 years ago when I was doing Tecmo and Griffey, and of course 2 decades is a extremely long time, and I look back and I'm like, I could have done things so much better. But it's still like, it's really hard to reverse. It's kind of like reverse engineering something. It's really hard
definitely
to do that because they're not making it easy, especially with these games. It was one thing in the Super Nintendo era, there wasn't anything. There's no protection. There's nothing. That game those are just wide open. They're basically text files. At least everything I worked in. But these games are not. There's all kinds of compression, and we don't even need to get into that. But there's a lot there. It's not easy, and it takes a long time. And I think even beyond the technical part is the mental part. You really have to be able to not give up, and like Rudy Tomjanovich, like never underestimate the heart of a champion.
The heart of a modder, yeah.
You really have to persist. You have to persist because there's going to be a lot of failures. There's going to be a lot of late nights. It takes a long time, and it's really frustrating. But at the end of the day, coming back to what Derek was saying about modding the games you love, I just wasn't willing to quit. I just wasn't willing to do it. This had to happen, and it was going to happen. And, it's a lot of years, but it did happen.
And I know John, you can relate to that, Derek. The portraits you've been making for our Live 96 all-time teams roster, you found out what I found out all those years ago, how fiddly it is to get the color palettes and everything working. But you did not give up, and that's what really impressed me, that you've made all these great portraits so far. And so I think, Derek, you can definitely relate to that.
Countless hours in front of Photoshop and Paint.net trying to figure out how to make the file the appropriate format and whatnot to work in the game. And so it actually looked like a true in-game portrait that EA would have added. Yeah, no, I totally get it. I think that, when I got the demo from you, John, of the Legends on Fire Edition mod. What I was so blown away by was the fact that this isn't just adding a face to the game, like an art piece, right? This isn't just putting a face over a face or replacing one team and whatnot. It's like what you said, it's almost like reverse engineering the game. It's changing a mode, changing the text around that mode, changing the matchups in that mode. It's adding new teams over not just over the existing teams, but adding new teams to slots,
revamping the concept.
New slots and whatnot. It's changing the signs that are being held up in the crowd to make it so it represents that new team that you added, and make sure that the Dornas represent that era. Like, I saw a Virtua Tennis Dorna and I almost fell over. I was like, this is speaking to part of my youth, and this is absolutely amazing, and it belongs for this team. That's what was so impressive. And in my opinion, those are some of the most impressive mods, because it's not just replacing art. It's not just, using existing, putting art over existing in-game assets. It's literally like making your own version of a game. It's wild.
Yeah, and it's during the process, and when you the not the modding of the actual game with the project, but the actual, going back to the lab and figuring things out. When you're doing that, it's so easy to just be like, oh, I can add the team logos. It would be awesome if I changed the team logos, and just stop there. But what I would encourage is, whenever you can change something, whenever something new comes up, you got a new thing that's kind of unlocked in your repertoire, go back and really rethink the whole project. I know it's asking a lot, but that's kind of was my process. Was whenever something new came up, I went back and said, okay, what does this change? Because when you're on the ground and you're you're working on it and you're staying up late and doing it, I think, for me at least, that's not when you get the best ideas. The best ideas come when you're not on the computer and you're just conceptually thinking about what should this be, when you're playing the game, when you're going for a run, when you're walking the dog. That's when I got the best ideas of, like, okay, this is what I want to do. I want this whole thing to be different, and this is how I want it to be different. This is the crowd signs. I want that. I want those banners that I didn't give a second of thought for 3 years. I want those to have the same kind of, jovial banners. So I don't think I accomplished that, but I did do the video game ads, and I think that adds a bit of, a little bit of fun. It's fun to see a Mario Party banner.
Yeah, I've lost sleep over projects. I really have, like modding projects, like thinking about all the possibilities, what I want to do with them, being super excited to get the release out so the community could get their hands on it. And then, I could get feedback from them, and then I could maybe see videos go up on YouTube and on social media in general, just like them playing the mod that, I worked tirelessly on. That's amazing, right? So it must mean a ton to you to, this mod was just released like within the last 7 days, and it already has upwards to 1,500 downloads. And this game is a 13, 14-year-old basketball video game, and you've been able to, get so many people to have a new experience on it. Yeah,
and the forum post has almost 8,400 views. The YouTube video has, I think, 3.4 thousand. Definitely a lot. It's cool. It was so weird to see YouTubers playing the game and like explaining it, and especially seeing things that I had edited at the 11th hour, the very last minute, and being like, oh man, this guy is showing off something I worked on last week. There was a couple of things, courts that I sent you, Derek, the Seattle one. Like, I just changed that on the very last days.
I'm glad that center court logo actually worked out. The one that I was able to find like a PNG of, because that Seattle court is so classic.
It's so cool looking. It's so great. And then, of course, the original on Fire Edition, it was a confusing era for the developers, I'm sure, because the Seattle Supersonics ceased to exist, but they had all their assets in the game. So they had Kemp and Payton, but they play in the 2010s or late 2000s Seattle court, and that's what the logo they have too. So as far as the release, yeah, it's, you can say 4 years and be like, it's a long time, but man, to work on it, and then it was always all my friends would be like, so when's this coming out? And it was always like, I just got to figure a bunch of stuff out, and then it'll be out. And it did take a long time, but man, 4 years, it's a long time. This conversation, that news post, the YouTube videos, it's also weird because it's like, it's not like I'm staying up late and dreaming about this moment, but I was looking forward to putting this game out for so long for many reasons. And one of them is so other people could have it and it could be kind of solidified. And another is just like, get this thing off my back. I've been working on this for so long.
So yeah, I have two more questions about this mod, but before I ask those, I wanted to know, because we didn't touch on it earlier, was NBA Jam your first basketball video game? When I say NBA Jam, I mean the original, or did you dabble in basketball video games prior to NBA Jam?
Yes, I think the first, I definitely played Double Dribble, but I don't think it really connected with me, but I certainly played that. I think the first one that really connected with me that I loved, Tecmo Super NBA Basketball.
Thank
you.
Boy. I love it. You and I have talked about this before. I did too. I lived on that game for a while. Loved it.
Yes. So many great mechanics. The steals, the blocks were difficult, but man, they were rewarding. Those little cutscenes when you get like a 3-pointer that's just going to be a swish. Oh man, that was such a good game.
Game had portraits too. I was blown away by that. I've talked about that on prior shows. It was so advanced for the time. I don't know if Andrew, did you spend a lot of time on Tecmo Super NBA Basketball back in the day, or was that something that you revisited? You visited later?
Yeah, that's a game that I got many years later. My introduction to basketball gaming was Jam and Live. So I didn't play Tecmo until several years later. And of course, there's a couple of different versions of that on Super Nintendo, including the Australian. There's a special Australian version actually, which has the I think it removes Reggie Lewis and Michael Jordan, both of them, and there's a different PAL release as well, and there's the original US release, and then there's a follow-up US release that removes them as well. So there's a couple of different versions. I have both of them now on my in my collection, but it's one that I've revisited or visited for the first time rather many years later. And I remember Derek, we were talking about it with Josh and Dave from Nemo Gameo. It was they have I guess mixed feelings about that game.
I know that they didn't like the number of charge calls.
Yes.
That took place. And that is one of the gameplay issues. They happen far too frequent. But I definitely agree with John with this game. The pace was faster than Bulls versus Blazers. The pace was awesome. The cutscenes were excellent. Smooth. The stat tracking was amazing. The player profile pages. Just that game spoke to me. Like, that to me was like NBA basketball. And it was so awesome. But back to Legends on Fire Edition. Tell us about your 4-player co-op sessions on Parsec. So we've seen a bunch of YouTube videos go up on the new channel that you created. And, we got LeBron getting a game-saving block. We got game-winning dunks right at the last second and everything. And it's 4 players connected, just having a blast. Can you tell us a little bit more about those sessions?
Yeah, so it started in 2020, and we weren't playing together in the same room. So Parsec, I was really looking for a Parsec technology. I had not heard of it, and lo and behold, Parsec is amazing for playing games with low latency. So that's when we started. I would have a friend come over, at least one friend come over once a week, Sunday night, and we would play Road Trip. And at that point, it was already the current iteration with not a complete roster, but it was that franchise historical scenario. And on Real AI, and it's difficult, man. It's really difficult. I think it's more difficult with 2 people. And we played the hell out of it, and we had so much fun. But then when came across Parsec, it was on. As soon as we had Parsec working, we played it all the time, 4-player, and we really haven't stopped. So we've made some changes. So what we do now is we have a cloud server that we lease, and I think it's paper space, and I think it's like 75 cents an hour, and then $5 a month for the storage. And
cheaper than the arcade by a lot.
yeah, an hour. Yeah, it's so cheap. So what we do is it's a Windows machine, fired up, and that's where RPCS3 runs and Parsec runs. That's the host. So we all connect to that. It's signed in as me on that server, and then we connect to that system, and it's way better than the experience we had when someone was hosting on their machine, for a couple reasons. One, there's no real host advantage where they have the real, the truth of the game, and they're seeing it in front of their eyes, and everyone else has the disadvantage of being behind. But also, and this gets kind of complicated, but with corporate networking peering agreements, we find that everyone's latency is lower because they're on this corporate network infrastructure. So our buddy in Ohio, his latency is 40 milliseconds to the Paperspace server in New York. If he was connecting to me, I think it was like 50 or 55. So a market increase. Doesn't matter for most of us on the East Coast, but in the Midwest, it definitely makes a difference. Everything counts when it's over a certain amount.
I envy
thought it was cool.
I envy those ping times, quite frankly.
Yeah, I mean, Australia. He lives in Australia, and we still have a blast when he hosts and I connect, or if I host and he connects and whatnot. But he has the worst internet of anybody I've ever connected with. But we still make it work, and we've uploaded a ton of gameplay videos, playing co-op and head-to-head, and those videos look great, and we have fun, no matter what. And that's what it's about. But I did think that was cool about Paperspace, John, because I was logged in on Parsec one day, and there were two computers showing for you. There was the johnz1 computer, and then there was the Paperspace computer. So I find it neat that on Parsec, somebody can just hit connect on the Paperspace, John, and it sends them to, it connects to you, and then you guys can all play on that cloud server. So Parsec is probably the coolest thing I've ever seen. Almost.
Yeah, I agree. It's amazing. It's magic.
It's absolutely magic. I had a session with somebody today on NBA Live 2003, and I hosted this, and we played head-to-head. I was the Raptors, and he was the Orlando Magic, and I live streamed it at the same time. And those highlights are also up on the NLSC YouTube, but we had such a blast, and it just still blows my mind that we can play all of these games, no matter when they came out, with anybody really from all around the world. And I just think that software is just so cool.
It would be great if this is just the infancy of Parsec, and there's some kind of movement coming where I can only imagine it, but there's, and I think they try to do it with Parsec Arcade. I think it's that tab called Arcade, where you can just like have someone connect your machine to play a game real quick. But if I can imagine something like that kind of blows up and it becomes huge, and we're talking 5 years from now, and it's like, oh my God, we have so many people playing Legends on Fire Edition because everyone's connecting on Parsec. That would be so cool. I really hope that happens.
It's changed, Andrew, in my basketball gaming habits.
Totally, yeah.
It's been unbelievable for us. I mean, we're connecting on Double Dribble. So a game that came out in the 80s.
Hoops.
We're connecting on Hoops. We're connecting on NBA Live 96. We're connecting on emulator games, like PC, straight PC games, everything. It is just, it's blown up on the Discord. You've seen it, John. On the NLSC, there's just a lot of people connecting, a lot of people talking about their experiences. I think it's the future of retro gaming. And I love to see it. And I love those 4-player highlights.
Oh, we have so much fun. I mean, we played last night for 4 hours. Highlights coming soon with that one, but it's so much fun. It's so much fun. It's so competitive. Everyone I play with is just getting better and better. And it's so great to see people interacting and playing without problems. I mean, I'd say half the time there's problems, but the internet is a really complicated connection. It's almost like I'm not surprised when there's problems, but it's so great when there aren't problems. It's Parsec is the best. It's amazing technology.
So I have one more question for you related to NBA Jam on Fire Edition, and then I'm going to get to a quick fire round where I ask you 5 questions, which we didn't rehearse, folks. He doesn't know what these questions are going to be. But do you have any plans for future projects with NBA Jam on Fire Edition?
Yes. In fact, there is. So this is kind of the benefit. I've been on the other side of this, where someone comes out of nowhere and releases something, and you're like, oh my God, if he has this, what else does he have? Well, the good news is I have other things. So we have, me and my friends, basically all these projects from Fire Edition, they've all been, if you've been listening to this conversation, this is targeted towards multiplayer. And we haven't played Legends on Fire Edition for, 6 months. We just don't play it. We play other things I'm working on. And one of them is in the final phases. And I am targeting April, it's April 1st right now. So I'm targeting this month to release it. In fact, I really, really strongly want to have it out this month. And it's totally different from Legends Edition. It's its own thing, and it won't be a long wait, and it's really cool.
And it's the 30th anniversary of Jam, so great timing, obviously.
Yes, that's great. And I guess the ship has sailed for a EA announcement of a new NBA Jam. So
John,
I don't know.
That brings us to the next. Can you believe it? Can you believe that we are not there? Like EA Sports is not celebrating NBA Jam.
It's weird. I really don't understand it. I haven't understood it for so long. I mean, I remember for so many years, me and a few friends that love this game, we would just be like, "What are they doing? What are they doing? It's been 5 years. It's been 10 years. Now it's been 12 years. The game's so good. What are you doing?" I don't understand it. I don't know if it's licensing and it's just like, the cost of NBA license is too high, or I don't know. It's really strange. The game is so good.
Oh, you got to develop those Madden Ultimate Team cards, so that takes up all the time, I guess. Microtransactions.
Yep. So in addition to the project coming out in April, hopefully, there's other, I would say, slightly less exciting projects, but I do have other ones in progress too. Don't know when those are gonna come out, but those are kind of, I would say, offshoots of Legends Edition, and it's really just like, at some point I got really tired of the limitations that I have with Legends Edition. The hard code number of teams, the number of uniforms, and kind of like balancing all the player swaps. So it kind of solves the problem. Not really solves it. It's a workaround. It works around it, and then goes to new places, we'll say. So yeah, look forward to that in the future. But there's one coming very soon in the next month.
Well, you're on the community's radar now, John.
Yeah,
they're going to be keeping an eye on your work and your, that Kotaku article and all the YouTube videos going up and whatnot. It all leads to your name. So I'm sure that when that next release happens, that people are going to be just like all over it.
I hope so. It's really cool. We've been playing it for a while. It's really fun.
Yeah, we can't wait. So to end the show, this is something we do with each one of our guests. I'm going to do just a quick fire round of questions. Again, John doesn't know what these are, but I'm going to ask you to make a quick answer on each one. So in real life, Shaq or Hakeem?
And what is the context? You're
starting a team.
Starting a team. And it's the beginning of their career?
Yep.
And and the injury history is this. It follows their same injury history, which is like none.
Absolutely.
Oh, I think Shaq. He really, yeah. I think Shaq.
Perfect. For me, it would be Hakeem, but I'm not going to knock anybody for choosing Shaq. Both of them are huge legends. So, 80s Lakers or 80s Celtics?
I can't possibly even consider saying Lakers. It's not even. It's not in my blood. My blood is green. It's not purple.
Oh my God, I love it. You know me, I grew up a Celtics fan. I live an hour outside of Boston, so.
You guys actually live very close to
contest.
each other. We found
We
out.
do.
Yeah.
We do. Yeah, we're practically in neighboring cities. So just so people know, yeah, we both, John and I both live in the New England area. So dunk contest, Zach LaVine or Dominique Wilkins?
Boy, I think if Dominique was born 20 years later with just the same person, the same physique, the same abilities, I would take him. Just the power. I mean, LaVine could move, but man, Dominique could throw it down. He would do some amazing stuff these days.
You can't beat the power. I think Andrew agrees. I can't go against Neek in this.
Yeah. I mean, it's just incredible. And I did put together that 88 dunk contest redo in NBA Live 08. You can check that out on the NLSC YouTube channel, of course. And just watching that MJ versus Neek contest over and over again, the controversy of it aside, that was such an incredible display. And obviously MJ brings it, but Neek was such a great rivalry in the dunk contest. Incredible, Neek, yeah.
And I still take Neek over the dunk contest with Neek over Zach LaVine's anyway. So 3-point shootout. Now I know this is going to be tough, John, because you blew green like I do. Larry Bird or Steph Curry?
Man. I think Larry, he could get into his form. Curry's such a free-flowing player and free-flowing shooter. Of course, he's unbelievable, the best ever, but I'll take Larry just because he's such a perfect set shooter.
He's also the ultimate competitor. I feel like he would will himself.
Yeah. especially if he knew who Curry was at the time and he knew he was going up against.
Right, exactly.
Curry hasn't won 3 in a row. Bird's won 3 in a row. Curry hasn't. Just saying.
It's true. It's very true. Last one, and this is probably the toughest for most people. When I ask this question, I've asked this on Twitter on both of my handles at one point. In-game dunker. Who do you choose out of Sean Kemp, Vince Carter, Michael Jordan, and Dominique Wilkins?
Oh, man. That's really tough.
I asked these at the end of the show because I think you would probably hate me if I had done this at the beginning and we wouldn't have finished the show.
That question might be harder than the GOAT debate, quite frankly.
Just going one by one. So Kemp, boy, vicious. I mean, just vicious. And there's that Kevin Harlan quote of, I think it was a KG dunk where he was like, no regard. Oh no, it's LeBron. No regard for human life. Like I think it was LeBron over the Celtics too. That's Sean Kemp to me. He wants to embarrass someone. That's what I think. So, but at the same time, man, Vince Carter, he got up and moved almost like none other. He was an unbelievable in-game dunker. It's hard not to say Jordan. Like, he flew, and that's what I'll have to go with him. And Dominique, of course, incredible in-game dunker, insanely violent dunks. But Jordan, just for the, all things being equal, they're all incredible. But the moments he had, the big moments, the big dunks and big moments, I'm thinking Knicks. Like, he could rise up literally and figuratively in big moments to put one down.
Even later in his career with that jump stop dunk into on Greg Ostertag.
Yes.
Just looks, it's the sheer fluidity of Jordan mixed with power, right? And style. Mm-hmm. And I know I'm asking the questions, but I'll let you know that I have to go with Jordan too.
Yeah.
I can't. Vince Carter was ridiculous. Remember his dunk on Morning when Vince Carter was with the Miami where he went behind his back, and then just absolutely filthy contact dunk. But it still didn't, in my opinion, have the same look and style of Jordan. And I think Jordan looked as good in the open court as he did when he was dunking on contact. Like, he was just ridiculous. So I would agree with you. What do you say, Jordan fan Andrew?
Oh, well, I disagree completely. No, I am complete agreement on that point. And it is tough, and you try and put the bias aside, and Vince Carter was amazing. Neek, as you say, those incredibly violent dunks, those bring you down to belt height and just right back up in someone's face, and Sean Kemp, big man out of the break. They talk about evolution and big men can dribble these days, and go back and watch those Sean Kim highlights where he's taking it coast to coast. It's I don't think you could go wrong with any of those answers, but my heart and my head says MJ. But John, thank you so much for joining us, and please feel free to join us again in a future show. It's been so great to have you on and chat about this great mod and your background with modding and everything. And before we let you go, is there anything else you'd like to promote or let our community know?
Yeah, thank you so much, guys. This is a blast. Every bit as fun as I knew it would be talking to you guys about NBA and Jam and every other game. Not too much to promote. I've got the YouTube NBA Jam on Fire Edition Mods is what it's called. Just posting highlights there, and the trailer for Legends on Fire Edition's out there. Any other new releases will certainly be on that same user, so I would recommend subscribing to that. Nothing else to promote, but I do want to put out a call for help. If you are at all talented with reverse engineering, figuring out game files, digging into how a game works and how you can change it, and you're interested in NBA Jam, please contact me because I need help with this attribDB file that I mentioned before. It is going to unlock so many cool things for this game. I know this game is new, and if you like it, if you love it, you're probably like, how could you possibly improve this? There's so much more that can be done and so much more cool stuff. Expanding the rosters, the number of jerseys, making everything accurate, all the jerseys fitting into the game, custom shoes, all kinds of stuff. There's so much more to be added. If you're good, please contact me. I'd love to get help for that. The other technical thing is if you have any experience with increasing a hard-coded maximum number of teams. I've tried to add that 68th team. The game just crashes. So if you have any experience with that, please let me know. I would love to get help on the technical side of this game.
No, thank you so much for coming on, John. This has been a blast. We love that you're a hoop head just like us and that you love NBA Jam on Fire Edition, as much as we do. Like we've talked about it so many times. Andrew and I are playing the road trip. We're deep into that and whatnot. But yeah, no, thanks for coming on the show. This has been perfect.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. It's been a blast. And I forgot one more thing, but it was so funny over the years listening to your show and listening to you guys talk about NBA Jam on Fire Edition. And I'd be sitting there alone and being like, I can't believe I have this game and I'm not contacting them and just giving it to them. These guys need this game. They need this mod.
Well, you must love it, seeing me connect with all these people in the community then.
Yeah.
I've been all over this. I mean, it was so easy to install. And everybody that I've connected with has just been like, wow, this is a great experience and this is a lot of fun. So it's a testament to all of that hard work, and I can promise you that Andrew and I will be having many more sessions on it, and you'll see some videos go up on the NLSC YouTube.
No doubt. So thank you again to John for joining us, and Derek, we're gonna have to spend many more hours with that mod.
Not only spend more hours with it, but share that footage with the community. I can't wait to stream some games that we play. Maybe we can even be mic'd up. We can also, create more videos for the YouTube channel in general, like we did with the 1992 finals, Bulls versus Blazers. I think that, I can't wait for future projects from him. And he was an excellent guest.
Absolutely. And twist my arm, I'll play those games. Twist my arm, Derek.
Right. It's not like we didn't love NBA Jam on Fire Edition already. It's just this is just added a whole new experience to an already amazing game.
Even more incentive, and definitely check that out in the forum. You can find the release and support thread in the Other Basketball Games section, and of course in the Other Basketball Games section of the downloads database. That's where you can download the mod, and we definitely recommend doing so. With that being said, that has brought us to the end of this week's show. As always, we thank you for tuning in and invite you to join us again next week, either on the NLSC, NBA-live.com, our YouTube channel, or your podcast app of choice. In the meantime, please connect with us on social media. That's where you can get in touch with us and, of course, stay up to date with all of our content. So, Derek, go ahead and plug the handles.
Absolutely. You can find me on Twitter at D43G and at D4384. That's the platform I'm the most active. I am on the NLSC, D43, and I'm also on YouTube, D43.
I am Andrew in the forum and Andrew NLSC on Twitter. The NLSC is on Twitter and Facebook at the NLSC. Our Instagram is NLSC Basketball. We're on YouTube at youtube.com/NBA Live Series Center. And of course, keep a look to the NLSC itself, nba-live.com, for everything we do for basketball video games. So, thank you once again for tuning in, and until next time, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Derek.
Go get buckets, everyone.